Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
I'm here.
This is Tippett Productions bring you a TV season review.
This is a series that I did not expect that I was going to be able to watch in my lifetime, especially since it was exactly a dream of mine as a little kid to be able to see a show of this caliber to come around. But that is a story for another time.
Yeah, and what we're talking about is Monarch Legacy of Monsters.
For those of you who's not in the know, the Monarch Legacy of Monsters series revolves around Legendary Pictures attempt into the Godzilla phenomenon.
Or just basically anything deal with giant monsters that's under a American production. And this was all started back in 2014 with the first long reboot of the Godzilla franchise from American Hollywood Studio.
And from that point of view, I would say that this was definitely a neat area where it fits within that same mainframe. Again, this takes place in the same universe, so in this particular situation, we revolve around the world having to deal with the fact that giant monsters exist, or in this particular case, with this franchise has decided to dub as Titans.
Yes, and the thing is, a lot of cinematic universes has been sprung around back in around the 2010s, mainly due to the Marvel Cinematic Universe success, and many has had a lot of failed starts. This one's practically one of the ones that's maintained a steady pace, and quite underrated as far as its accomplishments.
And that's something that is unfortunate of the entirety when it comes to the kaiju or giant monster genre, where individuals look down upon it for the mere fact that it's dealing with such fantastical creatures. But it makes no sense considering that if things like Lord of the Rings exist and Harry Potter
or Jurassic Park,
if those things can exist in a world where they're not necessarily scoffed at as deeply as much as the giant monster franchise itself, then it makes absolutely no sense.
So so how is Monarch Legacy of Monsters expanding upon the MonsterVerse? Well, this is a story, at least so far in this first season, is a direct follow-up to the 2014 movie.
And if you're not in the know, you need to go ahead and watch that one. But basically, after the discovery of Godzilla or Gojira, however you want to, spice it up, and the existence of his kind, i.e., Titans, had basically made his world debut, specifically around
San Francisco.
Exactly, and which was the San Francisco event
or G-Day.
Exactly. The world is basically reeling back, and this particular story centers itself on a group of individuals living through it, primarily through the eyes of one of this main protagonist and not just her, but her brother and sister duo in the sense,
and a companion, as they are trying to find the whereabouts of the siblings' father who went missing after that day, the G-Day occurred.
Exactly.
And the show itself, at least so far in this first season, actually tells two different stories simultaneously.
That's true. This is a story that actually touches itself on the past as well as it does the present. The past being centered around
the origins of Monarch.
Exactly. And of course the origins of where this family necessarily finds itself.
Yes. And the present day of which
the search for the father.
That takes place just 1 year after 2014-2015 for the majority of this first season. I'll say from a tone-wise, it was appreciative to go back to the more grounded feel of when the world is just now coming to terms with the fact that these type of
fantastical things exist. And again, because this is a show, or at least a series that's supposed to center itself after the events of the 2014 movie, that film basically had a much grounded sense to itself as well. Yes, it had giant monsters in it, but it was very much taken into the space of, in the real world, say, as if how world governments, or specifically American governments, would be able to deal with this kind of threat. And in the rise of that G-Day event, an organization known as Monarch, a government sanctioned organization that centers itself on trying to locate and study and try to develop ways to combat these giant creatures, is the best defense force that they basically have at their, disposal. But of course, as with any particular defense force, there are quite a few issues that revolves around it, especially when it comes to government.
Monarch. The first time we see the origins of Monarch was in the 2017 film, the follow-up to Godzilla of 2014 at the time, called Skull Island.
And in those particular outings, it was pretty much just a off the corners
underfunded
organization that basically just observed and just kept itself to the small corner to try and analyze everything. This show takes Monarch into the steps of really trying to understand what is their purpose and why are they here.
Yes, and we're seeing basically how it started up from the ground up, literally, and also where it stands in the present day of which this season takes place. The show, better or not, does, because it is a direct follow up, not of 2014. And there's a huge gap between that, a 5-year gap between that and King Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Yep.
That you don't see a lot of the Titans as often as you can, because they do that strict time lapse of when a Titan actually occurred in the public's eye. They are they're not shown as much, as far as, especially as far as how long the MonsterVerse has come along. So when you have long stretches of episodes where it's mostly exposition like dialogue, or dealing with the family drama that's unfolding between the characters.
The individual parts that doesn't have those creatures in it has to be able to stand on its own.
And about here's something when I was discussing here before this season review, I broke this show based like this, and the actual title of the show, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, is a good way of how the show prioritizes itself as far as getting the audience attention.
Yeah.
Monarch, because overall this is a Monarch show first, but it explores that organization.
Exactly.
And then you have the legacy part, where a good portion of the drive of the show is a dysfunctional family that's find itself in the aftermath of G-Day, and how much that has affected their lives, especially going back decades, especially with it ties itself to the origins of Monarch itself.
And to be able to fully go into depth about the family and to go and their actual parts in it, it's good best that we go ahead and segue into the characters.
Okay. A lot of what is hit and miss with this first season deals with the perspective of the characters themselves. Positives first, right off the bat, I would say the past section, which mostly takes place between the decades of 1950s and 60s, is like
the strongest elements of the show, and that is heavily given thanks to 3 particular characters in general.
Lee Shaw, one of the headlining parts of the show, especially marketing-wise, was the very
unique take of having a father and son duo basically act the same character, just from 2 particular time frames.
And that father and son duo being Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell. Both, like Kurt Russell being a very established veteran in Hollywood, and Wyatt Russell is an up-and-coming good actor in of himself.
Coming into his own, I would definitely say. I could safely say that you are not taking a jar back whatsoever between the 2 actors as they are basically portraying this particular character. You feels as though this is legit this one character going throughout their life. I feel as though they did an amazing job making you believe this is the same person.
Yeah, Lee Shaw, he has a very good sense of very old-fashioned point of charisma that radiates from when you're looking at the past and the present version of this character.
Yep, and he's definitely he's a man of action and an individual that has principles and values.
Accompanying him is Kate Miranda. She's played by Mori Yamamoto. She is basically a great, a good original new character that I feel as though is basically one of the better characters in the MonsterVerse.
I wouldn't just say MonsterVerse. I actually think that she's the way that she was written is a character that I will put onto the pedestal of other human characters in the Godzilla mythos.
Not that many of
not that many to write home about.
But she, Shaw, and Bill
Randa,
who is only the so far in this new television series, is the only film character.
There's a recurring individual throughout the series. You first are introduced with this character from Kong Skull Island,
played by John Goodman.
And you see this character show up within this show, and between those two actors playing the Bill Randa in this particular setting, I can see how this individual basically develops into the man that you actually see, how his story unfolds from that movie and from this particular series.
And it's mainly because of his Randa and Yamamoto is where we have this legacy carried through. It's just. One of the better aspects to this past trio is the tragedy, a tragic sense that if you know the fate of Bill Randa's character in Kong Skull Island and how this series unfolds in this first season, that underlining really resonates throughout the show, this season of television.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we also have the present day group of characters, which is more the mixed to possibly negative subjective point of view of what the show so far has.
Mm-hmm. And that centers itself first and foremost on the brother-sister duo. On one hand, you understand, especially when you actually see their backgrounds, first and foremost, the unique aspect of their family dynamics, thanks to their fathers' lack of involvement in certain particular parts of their lives and hiding particular aspects from each other.
It's like they had these two, Kate and Kentaro Randa, they have a very strong start, especially since when we do see them, we're seeing a direct aftermath of 2014's G-Day.
Yeah, for her specifically on Kate's side, an individual who has actually survived some of that of the event itself, actually having been part of the if you've seen the movie, the 2014 version, the
Golden Gate Bridge
sequence, having been a teacher during that event, and then with Kentaro's concept, really his G-Day afflictions comes from the loss of his father.
And the unknown whereabouts, and these two go out trying to find them. It's just that they live so very different lives compared to where their father work, their occupation is, and so also as Monarch, to the point that if you were to take these two characters away from the Titan action, they don't necessarily have that much. No. And there's a reluctancy to their attitude.
Which is something that is commonly done in particular franchises like this, where you have characters who are brought into a situation that they don't necessarily want to be a part in and are dragged in throughout the entire story. And that doesn't make for fun and involvement for the audience.
At least it's not as engaging with the past sequence characters where they're on the ground, they're very motivated, and they're the ones who are really trying to go after the Titans, of which the show, which is the reason why the audiences
are tuning in. I feel as though the only real aspect to their dynamic that ends up helping to keep them grounded within the world itself is their company by a friend and confidant in the form of the character of May.
She shares that reluctance attitude with them, which is
It's an issue for following characters that don't want to be there. So why should you? But the thing that basically pulls her back into it, and the rest of the group, is the fact that she has ties to another organization and another deeper underlying storyline that helps intertwine everything together. But at the same time, is even though as interesting as her story elements are to the dynamic of the series, it's not enough of it in this particular series at this point to justify the slogging of having to deal with characters that, again, just don't want to be there.
Yeah, it really makes for a mixed bag of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Production-wise, though, this is the show Monarch, Legacy and Monster is distributed through Apple TV Plus.
And if you watch anything on Apple TV Plus, you would know that they put their money. They definitely make their money work for it.
They put their money. They as much as other streaming services have quantity.
Mm-hmm.
They do try
focus on quality. And again.
The Titans.
The Titans themselves, they're very well realized when you actually get to see them. The problem comes to the fact that they're hardly in the show in and of itself at all. I think it was 15 minutes worth of.
It's less than 15 minutes if you were to compile all the scenes together, which is
and they're awesome scenes. It's just not enough to justify an entire show that's supposed to be centered around a universe involving these creatures.
Like, this is a 10-episode show. And these you should have the same amount of runtime, screen time as Titans as you did with the criticisms that were had in the 2014 film.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty unfortunate because this is also one of the headline aspects is that this is a show that features Godzilla.
And that's again one of my favorite characters. That was half the selling point right there for me to come into watching this series. So. And I'm happy having to get the scenes that we did get with them, and they did when you actually get to use them. And
he's some of the best he's shown in the MonsterVerse.
But again, it's just not enough.
Yeah, but being that the MonsterVerse, this is an international set show, is actually very appreciative that even the show from some of this carries with the films how often these characters are being flown across different countries.
Yes.
Of something that's very appreciative as far with the production side is just how much time we actually spent in Japan.
Oh yeah, and which is incredibly important considering this is a franchise that was born from its Japanese roots.
Yes, we see Japan actually quite often in the show from the past and present day, and how Japan itself we see from the ground up of how the world is trying to adapt to this new reality. Another aspect, unfortunately, from the production side, aside from some very good VFX when we do see them, is the complete lack of music.
Yeah, for a franchise that also lives and breathes on how awesome a score is developed for it, this one definitely doesn't have anything that's recognizable as what you would want to actually come out of a production like this.
This is composed by Leopold Ross, and is barely even heard. Actually, music is actually.
Listen, if it wasn't for the concept that having skipped over the title sequence, I wouldn't know what the tune of this show was supposed to be.
Especially coming off of, unfortunately, Godzilla -1 from Toho.
Which we did an astounding
score.
My God. And of course, Godzilla King of Monsters, which I will continue to die on that hill, how awesome that movie was.
Even with the other MonsterVerses, from music from the first one to Godzilla vs. Kong, at least they were able to have music that is recognizable to the giant monster genre.
An identity that honestly needs to permeate throughout the entire franchise.
Not the very low tone, synthesized, last minute probably put together score. Together, which the score in itself is a representation of how I feel about the overall show in general, because I feel as though the show was announced a little bit too soon, probably after Godzilla vs. Kong was released, and the script was probably most likely not written less than a year and quickly put into production.
So at the end of the day, how do we feel about this particular show? I definitely feel as though they did some good aspects here and there that definitely might have me coming back to actually explore even further where the storyline is going to follow and go through. But there is quite a lot of work that they're going to have to get to in order to make it worth the journey and worth my while. So in that sense, I find that the Monarch Legacy of Monsters is a good show
So far.
but has so much left, heavy lifting to do in order to make it go beyond that point.
And so that was our review for the first season, and possibly, hopefully more, for Monarch Legacy of Monsters.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell down there at the bottom for notifications to give you more content just like this. Have you seen Monarch Legacy of Monsters? Are you a fan of the legendary MonsterVerse in general?
Or Godzilla.
Exactly. Let us know which was your favorites. What are you looking forward to if you came through for this first season, and what you want going into the second season? Let us know. Let's have that conversation going.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and also comment below, as well as following us on our social media outlets, Twitter, X, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as Letterboxd.
Of course, you ain't gonna get that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see you
See you
later.
later.